The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're gonna love it.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, so I'm telling you, man, as soon as I saw that AOC clip, I was like, I gotta get this guy on, man. This guy needs to be heard. He needs to have a platform. So anyway, hey, listen, everybody, have a really great guest that honestly it's a pleasure to have on. And his name is Jose Vega. And he is somebody that if you watch viral clips on the internet, you may have seen him and heard him. The only difference is hopefully on this podcast, his volume level is not going to be at the normal 10, which it was with the AOC clip, but it'll be right around normal. But hey, man, listen, I really appreciate you coming on the Deep Shallow Dive. Welcome.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to do podcast appearances and talk to people who feel moved and inspired by what I did. So, yeah.
No, I absolutely did. And you know what, let's just go ahead and start. Let's go ahead and start on that. So talk us through, you've done this a couple times now where, you get to a event that's being hosted by a prominent, politician, AOC, Jamal Bowman. I think there was something with Kamala Harris back during the COVID stuff. First of all, tell us, how do you even get to those things? Or are those kind of open to the public? Is there an issue even getting in?
Well, when I first started doing it, there wasn't an issue getting in. I mean, the idea is it's a congressional town hall. People are supposed to hear from their representatives, right? So, Kamala, the Kamala Harris one was kind of interesting. This was in 2021, and I've told the story publicly now, so I can talk about how I got in on that. So
All right, good.
This is the vice president of the United States, and she's coming to the Bronx. And it was just it was an event that was open not to the public, only to people who were invited. And the people who were invited were like union leaders, teachers, community members. I didn't get an invite, but I got in line anyway. And I looked at the list of so there was like a small petite woman who had a list with her. And I could look and see in the actual on names, and so I just picked the name. And as she was then asking, I said, "Well, that's my name." Oh, okay, all right, great, move along. And that was it. That was when I knew I was in. But when it came to Jamal Bowman, AOC, these are town halls that are public, and they're supposed to be public. So getting in on those wasn't a problem at all. It was actually pretty easy because they already opened it to the public, and yeah.
And when they open it to the public like that, and then is there somebody walking around with a microphone who allows you to ask a question, or are you just standing up and sort of, using your vocal cords?
Well, the reason I actually started doing this stuff is because they didn't take my questions. That was the reason I started. I mean, for example, with the Jamal Bowman clip, where I stood up and I said, where's the $50 billion for the Bronx? That was towards the end of his event, because when I got there, they said, oh, yeah, he'll be taking questions later on. Don't worry. And I sat there waiting to see if I could get my question asked. And then he said, okay, folks, we're going to wrap up now. It was great having you all here. We can do more on this. We can do more on that. And I just said, okay, I'm going to have to stand up, aren't I? So I stood up. And I said, you're a hypocrite, because you're sending money to neo-Nazis in Ukraine. Where's the $50 billion for the Bronx? And they're like 95% of the time, there isn't somebody with a microphone walking around. And that's the problem. That's why I decided to stand up. The AOC intervention, when I stood up against AOC, I was, my friend and I went in there. And the first thing we were told was, hi, do you have questions for AOC? And we both said, yes. Great, here's a note card. Write your question and we'll pass them along to AOC. And I said, bullshit. They're not going to, these things are always controlled. She's not going to take any tough questions from the crowd, especially if you're controlling it that way. Why not just have an open mic? So, we waited for AOC to finish her presentation, and then there was a giant Q&A thing there, and she just started reading questions off a note card. So my friend said, no. The only thing on the agenda right now is nuclear war. And that's when he stood up And then I followed. Thus began the explosion of the interventions, which has been an almost 2-year process now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right, let's stay on this AOC Jamal Bowman thing, because honestly, I want your perspective on this, because I really feel like you're going to be able to drop some knowledge. Like, what is the deal with the Democrats and Ukraine? Like why are they so unequivocally like carte blanche? And then as a follow up, this is kind of interesting to me. And then you got the Republicans who are the same with Israel. It's like they're unequivocally carte blanche with Israel, but the Democrats are unequivocally carte blanche with Ukraine, which, by the way, are the two things that are funneling, like, all of our money. So let's start with the Democrats on Ukraine. Give us your thoughts on that, man.
Well, with the Democrats in particular, they genuinely don't know. They genuinely don't know what it is they're funding, right? Most congressmen are briefed by some kind of intelligence agency that tells them Putin is an existential threat. And if he gets Ukraine, he's not going to stop, and he's going to be the next Hitler, and World War III is going to break out, And AOC, Jamal Bowman, we knows nothing about it, because he was confronted by a gray zone journalist named Liam Cosgrove. And he asked him, hey, do you know about the Donbass and the Lugansk? And Jamal Bowman says, I don't know nothing about that. I got to look more into it and do research.
Oh, that's
And
right. I saw that clip. I saw that clip. Yeah.
Liam Cosgrove says, these two regions were the reason why a war broke out. And he said, look, man, I don't know what you're talking about, man. And Liam Cosgrove says, yeah, but you're voting to send billions of dollars in weapons and money to Ukraine, and you don't even know the basics about what you're funding. And Jamal Bowman ran away like a coward, right? Because they don't actually know. And also the other problem is that there's a belief, and I've encountered this, being the fact that I'm a candidate here in New York 15 running against Richie Torres. There is a belief that people don't care about foreign policy, so that when it comes to foreign policy, they can do whatever the hell they're told and only focus on domestic, as if our foreign policy is not our domestic policy. And so Jamal Bowman, AOC, and these other people just believe what they're told. They actually don't know what they're funding. They just believe Putin bad, and that's all you need to know. They don't care about life before February of 2022. They don't care about to understand the nuance or the coup that Victoria Nuland orchestrated to overthrow President Yanukovych in 2014, which completely destabilized Ukraine and turned it into this puppet Nazi state. And then Zelensky wins the presidency in 2019 under a peace platform, and then he completely turns around and wants war and provoke Putin for war. So I mean, you see, this tells you why nobody in the Congress should even be in the Congress, because if they're voting to send money to Ukraine, they have mastered the fact that they don't have basic competency to understand the reality of the situation. And if you explain what I just explained to you, they say, well, you're swallowing Putin propaganda. No, it's true. And if these people actually cared about peace, there was a peace plan in April of 2022 that was sabotaged by Boris Johnson, right? AOC and company don't know that. You know why? Because they are imbecilic sellouts who only play the party line, and it came back and it's bit them in the ass. Look at Jamal Bowman. He just lost his primary seat to this George Latimer machine. I was on the streets in his district putting up signs that said, stop AIPAC. I wasn't supporting Jamal Bowman. I was simply letting people know, hey, this guy is spending $25 million. Maybe you don't want him as your congressman, because who the hell spends $25 million by AIPAC, by the American Israeli Political Action Committee?
Yep. And I definitely want to talk about that, because I think they fund Richie Torres as well, and I want to definitely get your views there. But you know what's funny, dude? It's like the Jamal Bowman situation. It's like on this side you've got exactly what you were saying. He has no clue about Ukraine, but he's voting yes to send billions and billions there. On the other side, he was pretty outspoken about Gaza and, the travesty that's going on there to the innocent Palestinian civilians, and then going up against AIPAC. So sometimes it's like, God damn, on on one side, I want to like root for the guy. On the other side, he's just as awful as everybody else. But it proves your point that fundamentally, none of these guys really get it across the board. It's almost like they want to get it on the topics that they're interested in, but on the majority of stuff, they're completely clueless about.
Well, even then, they don't get it on the Israel question. You know why they don't get it? Because they think they can still endorse Joe Biden as if, look, you can't go around saying Joe Biden is causing genocide and complicit in genocide and then turn around and still endorse the guy. As it's like saying, well, you know, Hitler shouldn't be killing all these Jews, but he has really good economic policies, so we'll endorse him anyway. It's an absurdity, and it's an absurdity that the voters see. This is part of the reason why I believe Jamal Bowman lost his election, not because he could have won if the Bronx portion of his district had come out to vote. Only 8,000 people in the Bronx came out to vote of an eligible 40,000 people. He lost by 13,000 votes. You know why the Bronx didn't come out to vote for him? Because they're tired of him. I spoke with people in the Bronx. They hate this guy. He doesn't do anything but pay lip service and go on cable TV. He was always a feckless politician, and just the fact that they didn't have to spend $25 million to get rid of him, frankly. They really didn't. He was going to lose his seat no matter what. It was just disgusting that the American Israeli Political Action Committee chose him, a very easy target, to make an example out of for all the other congressmen to see and look at and say, like, you see, you speak out against Israel, you're going to lose your seat. We'll put somebody else who's willing to play ball. That's what they're trying to do.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And so you're a registered independent, and you're running as an independent in which district?
New York 15, the Bronx.
New York 15, the Bronx. All right. Man, that's gotta be
there's just so it's clear, it's the only congressional district entirely composed in the Bronx. AOC has some of the Bronx. Jamal Bowman has an even smaller part of the Bronx, and Espaillat has a tiny part of the Bronx. But New York 15, that district is the only one entirely composed in the Bronx, which takes up a majority of the Bronx.
Got it. Do people like AOC there?
Well, to be honest, they do. I mean, they do. People on the ground do. Look, and listen. I don't, I know Tina Forte is running against her, and the truth is, when it comes to being on the ground, you talk to some of the people, the immigrants, you talk to people who are Hispanic, people who are low income. The thing about her office is that she actually does outreach for people. And I know this is the narrative people don't like hearing. I just tell the truth no matter what. She is
I appreciate that, dude. Yeah, I appreciate that, your service.
This is what, people who want to challenge her need to know. I mean, I know Tina Forte's out there running, and I don't support Tina Forte either. Believe me, I don't know what you think about Tina Forte, but I don't. She uses my videos all the time in her commercials. Because it's me yelling at AOC. Of course, she's going to use my videos, right?
Yeah.
I don't endorse Tina Forte, and I've said publicly anybody can use my videos however they wish, but I don't endorse Tina Forte, and that's for a whole other conversation. But here's the thing: do a large part of people don't like a large part of people in the district don't like AOC? That's true. I would say maybe about 30 to 35% of the people in the district genuinely just don't like her. Another 30 to 35% of people don't really care, and the 30 to 35% of people are super enthusiastic about AOC. And the reason they're enthusiastic about AOC is because her ground game, not even on the campaigning, she actually is involved in the community she's in. She does the homework club, she does housing assistance, rental assistance, welfare assistance. I mean, her office is genuinely a very good organizing resource. I have family that can't go to Richie Torres' office because he doesn't help them with shit, but they go to AOC's office for help, whether it's welfare or rental assistance, this or that. I mean, that's just the reality of what it's like here on the ground. Now, that's completely different, though. See, if she would be a very good state senator, a very good assemblyman, right? Somebody who only cares about their slice of the community, she'd probably be really good at it. A councilwoman, but she occupies an office, a federal office, her decisions affect the entire country. And that is not only where she is the weakest, she is completely bent over and complicit in whatever neocon takeover She has no idea what she's gotten herself involved in. And so when she introduces articles of impeachment towards Clarence Thomas and Alito, she's missing the bigger picture here. Joe Biden is not in charge of the presidency right now. There, and
Yeah.
you're going around right now saying Joe Biden is completely competent to run the office and that you're behind him 100% because Trump is worse. Newsflash, ma'am, we don't have a presidency right now. Joe Biden's not running the country, and people don't know who is running the country. And you want to act like this is okay? It's insanity. And honestly, that's the vulnerability that AOC has this year, where somebody like a Tina Forte probably could win. Why could she win? Because if she just comes out and starts saying, hey, AOC believes Biden can actually run the country, Tina Forte could win. Because it's just
Yeah.
calling
Yeah.
out the absurdity for what it is. Just tell the truth. Biden can't run the fucking country. The voters see that
Yeah.
shit. If they will look at you like you're crazy if you're going around saying, no, he's completely competent to run the country. Don't believe what you see.
No,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. Let me ask you this. Have you been like interested in politics your whole life, or is this a relatively new thing for you? Or what kind of, I guess, gave you this fire? Because I love it.
I've been involved with the LaRouche organization and the Schiller Institute
Oh,
since I was
yeah.
about 15 years old. And so
Okay.
there's a whole documentary about it that some friends of mine, do Dissidents? Do you know who they are? They're
Mm-mm,
usually on Jimmy
mm-mm.
Dore's show all the time. They made a documentary about me and before I decided to run for Congress and why I decided to intervene. So it was, but yeah, I've been involved with the LaRouche organization and the Schiller Institute for 50 years, and the LaRouche organization has been around for 50 years. I've been around for 10.
And that's
The organ-
Lyndon LaRouche, right?
yes.
Lyndon. Okay. You know what, dude? This is amazing. So my dad, he passed away unfortunately, but my dad was like the OG of, I mean, he was so well versed in geopolitics. And unfortunately, I just wasn't interested enough in it while he was alive to be able to have these conversations. I wish I was, but man, Lyndon LaRouche was his guy. So
Really?
give us, yeah, my dad was a Lyndon LaRouche guy. It's unbelievable. And you know what? I'm so glad you brought this up.
We might know him.
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, we grew up in Ohio, so we grew up in Cleveland, but my dad would always talk about Lyndon LaRouche. And again, I just wasn't into stuff then. Give us I don't know, a 30, 60 second or however long it takes. Like, what is LaRouche all about? Because obviously it seems like you're all about that. I really want everyone to understand what that I guess methodology or what that perspective is, the LaRouche perspective and your perspective. Like, what do you guys stand for?
Well, look, everything I am, everything I believe, everything I do is a product of me being a part of the LaRouche organization for the last 10 years of my life. A lot of people get uncomfortable when I say that because people talk about LaRouche and it's like, whoa, isn't he a cult leader? Isn't he a far right? Isn't he a far left? There's a lot of attributions given to Lynn. The truth is, for one, what you see in me is what the organization is. Secondly, Lyndon LaRouche, since the early 1970s, has been organizing in the United States to bring forward a vision where the world could actually cooperate, not fight each other. And he had plans for developing the world through infrastructure and scientific technology. And I think one of the ways to explain his philosophy is, what do you want the world to look like when you're old or even after you've died? Like, what have you done to make the world a better place so that those who are around after you can live a better life than you can? And
Mm.
so this guy has worked with all sorts of people. In fact, every day I learn some kind of new tidbit of history of who he worked with. I mean, the guy worked with, Mexican President Jose Lopez Portillo. He worked with India's President Indira Gandhi. He worked with Ronald Reagan in the White House administration. He's worked with Mother Teresa. He had James Bevel as his vice presidential candidate. He's worked with Amelia Boynton Robinson, a legendary civil rights figure. Every day I learn something new and I'm just like, what? I've been around for 10 years and there's just always something new that I learn about. And the guy was completely railroaded in the late 1980s and 89 when they put him in jail. Who put him in jail? Henry Kissinger, George H. Bush, Robert Mueller. The Robert Mueller who tried to put Trump away under Russiagate was the same guy who was prosecuting Lyndon LaRouche on fraudulent charges, which were proven to be fraudulent. The former Attorney General under Johnson, Ramsey Clark, came out and said, "This is the greatest miscarriage of justice I have ever seen," what they were doing against Lyndon LaRouche. So you think about all this, and it's like, if people actually understood who Lyndon LaRouche is or was, because he died in 2019, they would see him as the Julian Assange of the 19th.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. I'm gonna definitely dig into him. All right, let's talk about something that I've brought this up on my podcast a lot, and it's really the concept of the Uniparty. And I think that is another thing that I know you can speak on. And it's like the more and more people understand, and when I say Uniparty, I'm talking about, gosh, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Pelosi, but then does AOC fall into the Uniparty? Jamal Bowman, Lindsey Graham, all these guys. To me, so many of them, practically all of them, are in this Uniparty. And then the only one that I've always questioned, honestly, is Trump. Is Trump in that Uniparty? So give us your overall thoughts on the Uniparty concept, and then who and what you think is a part of it.
The Uniparty concept, I mean, they like to pretend they fight about all kinds of issues, and then they talk about something boring like tariffs and taxes. But when it comes to foreign policy, they're like, unified, as they move as one unit. They're anti-China, they're anti-Russia, they're anti-Gaza or Palestine or whatever. They're pro-Israel, if you want to put it that way. Does AOC and the so-called squad fall in under the Uniparty? Yes. They like to pretend they don't. They like to pretend they're the outliers. Anytime they express any kind of rebellion against it, what happens is somebody from the up and ups comes and smacks them on the wrist and says, "You're not behaving properly. Get back in line." And we've seen this happen multiple times. Like, for example, when we created this environment where people, from when I confronted AOC with my friend Kynan until about November 7th, because this was the midterms, there were so many interventions happening over and over and over and over again, where people were just confronting people like Ilhan Omar, Elizabeth Warren, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, over and over and over and over again. They put the congressional wing of the Democratic Party, the Progressive Caucus, 30 congressmen, all put out this letter saying that we're calling for the Biden administration to exercise a little more diplomacy when it comes to the Ukraine war. Not even 24 hours later, all of them said, "Oh no, we didn't mean to put this out. This is from something way earlier. We shouldn't have put this out. It was leaked. We didn't mean to put it out." And we don't stand by that letter. Why? Because the moment they tried to do something that was quote unquote courageous, they were reminded who was actually in charge. And so whoever spoke to these people telling them to take it down is who's actually running the show. And so they are a part of the Uniparty, whether they like to believe it or
not. All right. Well, what are your thoughts on Trump overall? Assassination attempt aside.
Well, to be transparent and frank with you, and I've said this on different platforms, so I've already, faced a lot of the backlash, is that I voted for the guy twice. I was 18 years old when I could first vote in 2016. And I voted for him over Hillary Clinton because I thought Hillary Clinton was this evil, maniacal bitch. And now I believe that even more than I did back then. And then I voted for him again in 2020 because I didn't think Joe Biden was competent enough to even form coherent sentences. And I just thought it was going to be Obama 2.0. And I really didn't like Trump in 2020, but I was still stuck in this modality that, like, well, it's one or the other, right? So I got to pick one. So I voted for Trump again in 2020, and I was 22. I was 18 and stupid when I voted for Trump. I was 22 and stupid when I voted for Trump. Now I'm 25 and stupid, and I don't know who I'm going to vote for this year. It's certainly not going to be Biden. Or whoever the hell they put up on the Democratic nominee ticket. But Trump is an interesting figure because I don't personally believe he was supposed to be in the presidency. And I think Hillary Clinton really thought she was just going to ride into the presidency. And the Trump presidency was completely unexpected. I don't necessarily think he's good. I just think he's somebody who had his own ideas, and he filled his cabinet with a bunch of neocon warmongers. So, I mean, and then that's kind of what dictated his foreign policy, and that's what really turned me off him, especially towards the end. And even after he lost, there was still a period where he was president. Of course, November, December, and January, you're still president. I thought maybe he still might pardon Assange and Snowden, and he didn't. And that could
Yeah.
kill him, actually. So, he should have actually. Now, what do I think about him? I genuinely think that this assassination attempt on him is going to force him to act differently and take different considerations and think much more seriously now about what his role is, not just in the country, but in the world. And I know that's asking a lot of somebody because, to tell somebody, and this is true for every individual person, you have to place your life in the context of the greater historical means. You have to see your life 5,000 years from now. What meaning will your life have 10,000 years from now? I genuinely believe it can have a lot of meaning if you decide to do that. And I think Trump will now put himself in that mindset of like, okay, actually, they want me dead. They just tried to kill me. You know what? I should take it more seriously now, my foreign policy and why they want to kill me. And I think the potential for him to actually be better is
Mm.
there. The question is, we just kind of have to wait and see. I know he just picked JD Vance as his vice president. I don't know much about JD Vance. I know he has publicly said he thinks we're on the verge of World War III and we should pull back and we should negotiate with Putin, which is it's optimistic, but he is a product of Peter Thiel, and I don't trust Peter Thiel as I trust him as far as I can throw him. So I don't know what I think there, but
Mm.
that's my
I
view on.
didn't know he was a product of Peter Thiel. That actually makes more sense of why Trump picked him. I mean, when I saw the pick, I'm like, it's a nothing burger. I'm like, he's an unknown. He's really an unknown entity. I didn't see, and I still don't see how it necessarily moves the needle, with independents and then also Democrats that are not, super high on Biden. I don't see how he moved the needle. I thought he was going to flip the script and go RFK Jr. I really did. I was like, okay, that would be uh, an unexpected move that could kind of warrant a lot of things. A couple of things. First of all, geez, I can't believe you're only 25. Holy mackerel. You are wise beyond your years. Let's talk a minute about, I've talked a little about neocons and that concept, and really that goes back to, I mean, I think that really starts with Bush Senior even more than Bush Jr. and kind of comes all the way down. But I'd love your thoughts on, I've talked about forever wars on the podcast a lot, and to me, Afghanistan and Iraq are like the epitome of those forever wars, and maybe we're in two right now. But give us your thoughts on that stuff, like neocons. Who exactly were they? Who are they now? Warmongers, who are they now? And then WMDs, Afghanistan, all that, man. I'd love your perspective on that.
All right, well, all right, I'm going to give you the whole enchilada, as I like
Give
to
it.
say. Really, it actually goes back to World War II and the end of World War II. Usually, after every giant war mobilization before World War II, the United States active military would reduce completely down to something like 15%. We saw this in the Spanish Civil War. We saw this in World War One, right, where all of our forces would just pull way back. But the problem is that FDR died and Truman was brought in to replace FDR because he was his VP, and he dropped the bomb. And the problem with this was that's kind of where this neoconservative thinking started of might makes right. There were people like Bertrand Russell. Now, Bertrand Russell, I don't know if you know who that is, but people definitely know the symbol that he helped design, which was the peace symbol. So, you've seen the peace symbol. The hippies love to use it all the time, right? That was partly in design by Bertrand Russell. And today he's seen as this giant anti-war peace snake. But the truth is, he was advocating for the United States to use the nuclear bomb before Russia could develop one as a way to establish global hegemony and dominance, that the United States had to be the father or the caretaker of every other country, and we, with the force of our nuclear bomb, could rule the world. Now, thankfully, that should never happen, but that mentality always stuck through that the United States should have some kind of hegemony. And the other thing was that our war production was so good in World War II that people saw dollar signs on their eyes and said, well, wait a minute, I can make a lot of money by producing weapons of war. I mean, why would I stop this, you know? And there were ways out of it. I mean, there were people like Sun Yat-sen after the end of World War I who said that countries should turn their war production into infrastructure production, produce rail, steel, things that could be used to build, not weapons of war. But I digress. So you have this kind of hegemonic thinking since Truman that the United States has to play protector of the world, establish all the military bases it has around the world. It has to be involved in reconstructing parts of Europe that have been destroyed. And so this has carried on forward. I mean, and we saw Eisenhower, as he's leaving, he says, hey, by the way, there's this thing called the military-industrial complex. Yeah, it's really bad, but it's not my problem anymore, and I'm not going to deal with it. So he leaves. He gets out of there. And then Kennedy tried to address it, and then what did he do? He got a bullet in his brain for trying to stop it. And, you know, all of the wars between World War II to today have been about maintaining Western hegemony across the world in this so-called rules-based order. And we saw this, yes, of course, George H. Bush. Yeah, absolutely. Around that time, PNAC was created. PNAC is the something for a new American century.
Project for a New American Century.
That's right, yes. And this was made by Donald Kagan, who is Robert Kagan's father, who is the husband of Victoria Nuland right now. And so him and the Bushes and these other people created this like neoconservative think tank about why the United States should maintain its dominance around the world. And this has infiltrated like a virus in almost all foreign policy decision makings. But even before that, you had Henry Kissinger with this idea, with this National Security Memorandum 200, where he openly called for the United States to be involved in depopulation efforts around the world. There's this thing I keep quoting. Thomas Ferguson of the Population Affairs is quoted in 1979 as saying that if other countries aren't going to play ball when it comes to safe depopulation efforts, such as abortion, such as birth control, such as neutering themselves, then they get what they get in El Salvador. What was happening in El Salvador at the time? The Salvadorian Civil War. So he was saying wars are going to break out in countries where they need a culling of the population. Why? Because there was a belief in 1968 put out by the Club of Rome saying that there's too many damn people on the planet and that there are limits to growth. And this was taken seriously, or was used as a pretext to say, well, the United States should start wars around the country, around the world, so that we can keep the population levels low. And that's honestly where neoconservatism stems from. And I'm only scratching the surface. You know, this is just like, what I just gave you is basically like an introduction to understanding neoconservative thinking, you know. But that's how I see all of that stuff. So when you talk to me about Afghanistan, the first Iraq War, the second Iraq War, these were all just pretexts, not just to keep the military-industrial complex going, but as a way of instituting fascism in the United States. You know, I believe that 9/11 was allowed to happen. I don't believe it was orchestrated by our people. I don't think they would be that sinister. And maybe I'm wrong about that. I hope I'm not. But it was definitely known that it was going to happen, and it was allowed to happen so that they could institute fascism and surveillance in this country through the Patriot Act, which they did. And so now we are living in something that is worse than Nazi Germany, and we all pretend like we don't. So that's
and I think the majority of people don't even know that they do. You know, that's the problem. It really feels like for the first time, at least in our lifetimes, definitely your lifetime, my lifetime as well, because I'm double your age. I can't even believe I'm double your age. But it's like people are a little waking up to kind of what's going on. And it's interesting, I have my things about social media that I can't stand, but on the good side, they have created this platform for like 50 million investigative journalists. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing all this stuff on 9/11 come back up on TikTok and on Instagram and all that. I mean, the Gaza stuff is out of control in a good way in terms of bringing that to light. So at least people know what's going on. So it's interesting that it does feel like America for the first time gives a shit about politics. And again, I fall into that category. I never really cared up until COVID. COVID was kind of my wake up call where it just felt odd. The whole thing from March 13th, 2020, where either Trump or Fauci said, hey, try to stay in the house this weekend. Don't leave your house. That just felt weird to me. And I was just like, wait a minute, what the heck's going on? And it really caused me to start to pay attention more and try and find my own truth. And honestly, one of the things that I really admire about you is that I feel like that's how you're running your campaign. And that's from all the clips I've seen. It's you finding what you think is the truth and doing it, in a very vocal way. So speaking of that, I wanted to get your opinion because I think I've heard you talk about this. Nord Stream 2 pipeline, Seymour Hersh, all that. Like, give us your thoughts there because I've done an episode there as well. I think we're aligned.
Yeah, well, Biden had announced that he was going to blow up he didn't say blow up, but he said that if Russia invades Ukraine, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline is going to go away. And a reporter asked him, but what do you mean? Like, you don't
Yeah.
control that. And he just said, I promise you, we're going to do it. And Olaf Scholz is right next to him, like, anything we do together. And then suddenly, true to his promise, I mean, hey, the Nord Stream pipeline gets blown up, I think, in September of 2022 or something. And we all knew, or 23, excuse me. It's 22, that's right. Because then I confronted Torres in February when the revelations came out. So it was 22. And Radoslaw Sikorski, who is the foreign minister of Poland, tweets out, "Thank you, USA," with a picture
I
of the
saw that. I saw that. He literally tweeted out, I think, a picture of the water exploding, and he said, "Thank you,
Yeah.
USA."
Well, what's crazy is that my friend Kynan would actually then go on to confront his wife, Ann Applebaum, who herself is one of these neocon monster ghoul zombies who he actually asked her, like, hey, what did your husband mean by that? And she said, oh, it was a joke. And he said, why did he take it down then? Because no one
Yeah.
understood the joke. And so we started this whole campaign of like, what was the joke, Applebaum? What was the joke? And
Yeah.
but it was very clear from the beginning that the United States clearly did this, but we didn't have a smoking gun. And then boom, Seymour Hersh drops his whole expose on how the United States organized for it to be blown up. And he presented way better, credible evidence about who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline than the New York Times did or anybody else could actually provide. So thankfully he did. And as a result, I thought stupidly that the mainstream media would finally cover it. They didn't. So I had to go and bring it up myself. And so I had confronted Richie Torres on this issue. I confronted Hakeem Jeffries on this. And I confronted the heads of the New York Times, Washington Post, and others directly about this. And that's the one that really blew up, was the one where I confronted the entire, the media. And I said, is there anything you've gotten right in the last 20 years? And then I said, Russiagate wrong, Syria wrong, Iraq wrong, this really wrong. And, I mean, the United States, of course, blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Now what? Germany is buying gas, a liquefied gas from the United States at 6 times the price than they were paying the Russians, from a company called LNG. So it's getting shipped over there in boats from here over there. And now 40%, they're 40% energy dependent on the United States, and this is all because Germany wanted to shut down their nuclear power plants, that they're now in this problem, in this rabbit hole. So the fact that we did not go into World War III after that, after the fact that we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, I genuinely believe that God must have intervened somehow, because that was exactly the pretext to start World War III. And if it
Yeah.
wasn't for the fact that the Russians are actually much more patient than people give them credit for, we wouldn't be here.
Dude, I think the Russians are ridiculously patient, and the Chinese. Like they play the long game. And then, speaking to your point, I've asked this question several times on the podcast. It's like, how strong is the United States military? It must be pretty goddamn strong to be able to withstand. Like, I feel the same way about Nord Stream. Like, that is just a blatant, like, we're going to we're going to explode your pipeline, which is, a big source of revenue for Russia. So, like, I always think to myself, God damn, man, US has got to be pretty damn strong to be able to really flex these muscles and have Putin not do anything. Coupled with, I do think the dude is incredibly patient, and he's playing the long game in a big way.
Well,
All right.
absolutely. I mean,
Now,
yeah. Oh, well, no, go on, go on.
no, go ahead. Good.
No, I was just gonna say, I think humanity should be giving Putin and Xi Jinping a lot of credit for their patience. Um, there were many reasons and excuses. I mean, for example, if you had the same kind of warmongering cabinet that in Russia that you have here, we would have all been dead, the day after the Ukraine war had started. And thankfully we don't. And I think a large part of that has to do with people like yourself and people who tell the truth here in the United States, who are telling the truth and are showing the world that Americans don't want this warmongering government that they have, and that there are people inside fighting for a better government. Because probably we're the only redeeming thing about the United States. Ironically, it's the people. And I say ironically
Absolutely.
because I hate saying this, but it is the truth. People get the government they deserve, and it's we voted for Bush twice, and then Obama, and then Biden. We deserve what comes to us, and at the same time, it's time for us to stand up and take back our government.
Yeah, yeah. No, I always say to people, I'm like, it's not the American people. The American people, and quite frankly, the people of every country are good people. It is a select group of people. I used to say it's government. Now I've dwindled that down to even it's a select group of people inside governments that are the ones causing this, and they're the ones that have, agency issues. They're figuring out things to benefit them and their families and their, collective group. I absolutely think that it's not the country in general that's doing all these harms. And then it's like this neoconservative thought process. Now I think it's almost like neocons and neoliberals are like one party, like it cracks me up when I see George W. Bush and Obama and Clinton palling around. Like, that shit makes me laugh. I'm like, what are these three guys doing?
Yeah.
And what are their wives doing? Like, why are they all together repeatedly over and over again? That stuff is funny. And I hope people are starting to like wake up a little bit to that. I really do. All right, let me ask you about your, this congressional run. I've never talked to somebody running for a congressional seat. What is that like? What do you guys do every day? How do you even do that?
Well, it's a lot of sacrifice, I'll tell you that. Look, here's a little context for you. I live in the poorest congressional district in the country, where the median income is about $23,000 a year. The poverty line in New York City is $34,000 a year. What's running for Congress like? Well, I'll give you one big roadblock. You are not allowed to pay yourself more than whatever you made last year. So, for example, I made almost $20,000 last year. I can only pay myself $400 a week on this campaign.
Oh,
I have rent, credit card debt, car insurance. You try living in the most expensive city in the world on $400 a week. And that means who in the district is actually even eligible to run for Congress and can afford it. Let's say they are qualified to do it. Are they supposed to live off $400 a week as they run for Congress? let's say they even raise millions of dollars. They cannot legally give themselves more than that a week. And to make it better, you can't buy clothes with the campaign money. You used to be able to, but then too many people started buying Gucci bags and Gucci belts and expensive suits. So the FEC said, nope, you can't pay for haircuts with campaign money. You can't do anything for yourself with campaign money other than pay yourself, right? So already that nullifies pretty much the entire district who would even think about running for some kind of political office to run for political office. Because let's say they wanted to, they literally can't. Now, I was working at a coffee shop on the side when I first started this campaign, and I quit because I knew that I needed to devote myself completely to this campaign. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a fighting shot in hell. And so I took that vow and I said, you know what? I'm quitting my side jobs. I'm just going to live off $400 a week and I'm just going to make it work. And I don't know what comes after this, but that's what I'm doing. And so I'm blessed because enough people have decided to support us that we can have an office, that I can pay some people on my payroll to make sure they don't go hungry. And it's also maybe my experience is going to be very unique because I'm running in a district which is the poorest congressional district and with a congressman who is completely hated by 80% of the people here.
Richie
So
Torres.
well, Richie Torres, yeah. I mean, I'm on the ground. I talk to people. You tell people, hey, I'm running against Richie Torres, where do I sign up? You know?
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
it's either that or, oh, well, you're all the same and I don't trust politicians. Well, hey, I'm running as an independent and I don't believe in the two-party system. Oh, okay, all right, well, sign me up, right? So the question is a matter of getting the name out there that there is an alternative that is not beholden to the two-party system. And the truth is, we see it with people who are fed up with the two-party system, people who don't like Biden or Trump, who feel they should only vote Democrat because, well, you know, the Bronx is historically Democrat and my vote doesn't matter. Starts here. This revolution here in New York. I mean, I've got my friend Diane Sayre, who's running for U.S. Senate. Her and I are tied together too. Sometimes we act as a unit. You know, she's my favorite person in the world, and she's got a lot more experience. She's another Lelouch who's worth talking to, and you know, I would just say it's hard. It's difficult. Things aren't defined. There's no rigorous schedule. You have to invent basically what works for you. And every campaign I'm starting to believe is completely unique and different, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Are you going out into the neighborhoods and like knocking on doors and like, do you try to like maybe set up I don't know, an event where it gives you a chance to speak to a group of people? But then obviously I know the hard part is how do you get everybody to come out, especially in the hot summertime? Like, is that a big part? Is that a big part of what you do? Like almost like the kissing babies and shaking hands stuff?
Well, I'm definitely out in the streets every day, or not every other day. We try to go out as much as we can. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
days are designated office days. We definitely try to rally our volunteers. Look, for me to get on the ballot was one challenge, right? And you asked me what it's like running for Congress. New York State is the most difficult state in the country to just get on the ballot as an independent. What did this require? This required a minimum of 3,500 signatures in 6 weeks. We got 12,000 in 6 weeks. Is that because, you know, it's just easy to do it? No, it's the most difficult thing to do in a district where people are tired of politics. But you think that was difficult? Diane Sayre got 70,000 signatures in 6 weeks. Okay.
Wow.
She needed 45,000. Jill Stein couldn't do it. RFK Jr. had to pay people $2 million to do it. Diane and I did it without paying people a penny. Now, we did cover people's gas, reimbursements, and places to stay. Nobody made a profit, I'll put it that way, coming out and getting signatures for us. People did it out of volunteer, a sheer will, volunteer, and just a belief that our mission is greater than just us as individuals. So, you know, yeah, but we are out in the streets as often as we can be. We're making phone calls. We're meeting with community leaders. I've spoken at several mosques. I've spoken at different organizations. I've met with people, and we're only just building now, you know, our base. So, you know, really, in a sense, like the potential to do things is really, really high.
There, like, and you're on the ticket, so like literally, your name will be in print on the ballots, and I'm going to knock on wood for you. If people are this disgruntled with Richie Torres, hopefully a lot of people will be circling your name, even if they don't necessarily know everything you're about. How many people besides you and him are in this?
There is a Republican whose name is Gonzalo Duran, who I like him. He's a good guy, but he has no business
Yeah.
running for Congress. I mean,
Okay.
I debated him, and he's got no real political substance behind him other than the fact that he's a conservative and wants to show people an alternative. I believe
Yeah.
in reindustrializing and rebuilding the Bronx, using the youth to use it, to do that, to work the youth to work in conjunction with the Army Corps of Engineers and retired union leaders so they can do that. I think that's completely possible. And I think it's the only thing that'll save the country. And he's like, well, we should maybe open up more hot dog stands. I don't know. I mean, not to belittle
Yeah.
his beliefs. I mean, he is genuinely a nice guy. He lives in the same neighborhood I do. But, when it comes to foreign policy, he's tied at the hip with Richie Torres. There's virtually no difference when it comes to his foreign policy.
Give us
So
your foreign policy. Give us your foreign policy.
I believe that the United States should be working with the Belt and Road Initiative and be a part of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
Yeah.
I believe that not only that, but I believe the United States should be exporting people that it trains here who are as young as 18 and as old as 30 or 35, who are trained in advanced engineering, advanced civil engineering, advanced aeronautic mechanics, exporting them around the world to help rebuild places that need development and infrastructure, so that if the United States wants to utilize its vast resources, instead of having just military bases, it has bases of engineers where people are just building stuff every day. Nuclear power plants, bridges, roads, water plants, high-speed rail, science centers, hospital, whatever needs to be built around the world, that the United States is known as the country that'll do that. That we have an elite squad of people or elite squadron of people who can be exported around the world, that when people see the American flag, they know development is coming, not war and destruction.
Dude, that is a great take. That is a great take. I've actually talked about BRICS and the Belt and Road Initiative, and I've versed my audience on that. I've never, though, personally taken it to where the US should join it, but absolutely. And then the second half of everything you said, it's like the US sending out their elite squadron. I almost feel like that's what China's trying to do with this Belt and Road Initiative, and with everything that they're trying to do. They're trying to take over as the country that gets to plant that flag. So I think that's a great take, dude. That's a great take. And that's the superpower that America can be. I mean, we're set up to do it. We've got, I don't know how many thousands of military bases around the world. We should have the same amount of intellectual bases around the world. That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense, dude.
Well, this was Kennedy's idea with the Peace Corps. He said, that he didn't want people to have the image of, when they think of America, they think of a soldier with a gun, but they think of somebody coming with a blanket and a hug. I mean, like that's what his idea was with the Peace Corps. And before it got all, used as intelligence agencies, it became co-opted by the CIA, just to tell you the truth. I mean, it
Yeah,
could have been an effective tool for peace around the world.
very interesting. All right, listen, man, we could probably talk for another hour, but I promised you I'd keep it to right around an hour. Tell us how people can find you, support you. I'll get all your links. Like, how do people donate to the campaign? How does that work?
Well, people can donate at votevega.nyc. People can find me
Okay.
on Twitter. If you just type my name, Jose Vega, I come up now. Not to toot my own horn, but that's just what happens. You can Google me too. I'm on Instagram at HoseBTrigger. Don't ask me about the name. I made it when I was like 12. Maybe there's a way to change it. I don't know. But at this point, it's just like kind of stuck. But yeah, people
You
can
can change it if you want. You actually can totally just go in and change your username, which I'd recommend make your regular name.
probably.
All right, I'll put all those links in our notes. Personally, man, I'm gonna keep reposting your stuff on Instagram. Actually, I reposted the one thing, and it's up to like 75,000 views. It's moving.
Well,
What was that? That was from
The Asia
The
Society?
recent one. Yeah, the
Yeah.
recent one.
Well, you know, it got over 100 million views in China.
100 million?
Yeah, so somebody posted it on Douyin, which is Chinese TikTok, and they told me that it had Chinese subtitles on it, and they sent me a link and a screenshot, and it said, like, at the time it had like 60 million views or something, and I just went back to it. So, you know, and then
Oh
then
my
it
God.
was translated into Brazilian subtitles, French subtitles. I mean, these things kind of happen with all the interventions. They get millions and millions of views if they're really good. So, you
That's
know.
amazing. Tell everybody what that was, because I'm going to put that in the show link as well.
Oh, the Pottinger intervention where at the Asia
Yeah.
Society? That was me. Hold on. Uh that, excuse me, had to get that out.
Bless you. Yep.
That was me at the Asia Society with some of my friends, and I stood up to State Department spook and China advisor to Richie Torres, Matthew Pottinger. And so, you know, I had to tell him the truth that, you know, you want to call Xi Jinping a dictator and that China's the enemy. But I mean, the truth is, you know, what are we doing? We're the actual assholes around the world. So, yeah.
I love it, dude. I love it. That thing went crazy. God, I can't believe it's gotten that many views. All right, listen, Jose, all the best. Absolutely, I will stay in touch with you. I will do everything the Deep Shallow Dive can to keep getting your message out there and giving you our platform, and then I'm going to help you get on other podcasts as well. But this was incredibly enjoyable for me, and I really appreciate it, man.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, you know, we need to raise $3,000 by the end of next week. So, you know, it'd help us pay the rent, and the max somebody can donate is 3,300. Just saying, putting that out there. It's the max, but
Okay.
you know, whatever anybody can do, be very helpful.
Absolutely. Sounds good, man. All right, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.